They showed us a human surviving inside a star. At least, that was what the combat footage seemed to prove. I remember the silence in the lecture chamber. 600 cadets. 600 future officers of the Coalition Defense Fleet. Not one of us moved. The image hovered above the center platform. A battlefield. A dead world. A burning sky. The instructor paused the recording. Observe. The human appeared near the edge of the frame. Tiny. Insignificant. Easy to miss. Just another soldier among thousands. I relaxed. Humans were predictable. That was the first thing we learned about them. Humans charged toward danger. Humans fought impossible battles. Humans sacrificed themselves for each other. Humans died loudly. Simple creatures. Violent creatures. The footage resumed. Enemy plasma batteries fired from orbit. The ground exploded. Mountains vanished. Entire armor divisions disappeared beneath oceans of fire. The human remained in the background. Walking. Not running. Walking. I assumed the footage had frozen. Several cadets reached the same conclusion. Then the smoke shifted. The human was still moving. My sensory frills tightened. That was strange. The instructor zoomed in. The human wore damaged combat armor. Half of it was missing. His helmet was gone. His face was covered in blood. One eye was swollen shut. He should have been dead. Instead, he was carrying another human across the battlefield. I made the obvious conclusion. The injured human must have been a high-ranking commander. A leader. An important strategic asset. Humans protected valuable individuals. That was logical. The instructor displayed recovered military records. The unconscious human was a cook. The entire lecture hall became quiet again. Why save a cook? No answer was given. The footage continued. Orbital strikes intensified. The sky turned white. Sensors from nearby drones began failing. One by one. Then all at once. The battlefield vanished inside a storm of radiation. The recording ended. I waited for the explanation. None came. Instead, the instructor showed the casualty report. The cook survived. The soldier survived. 73 hours later, both returned to combat. I felt confusion ripple through the chamber. That was impossible. Even human biology had limits. Didn't it? The instructor moved to the next recording. This footage was classified for 30 years. That sentence alone increased my pulse rate. Military archives rarely stayed sealed that long. The image appeared. A mining colony. Remote. Unimportant. The kind of place nobody remembered until something horrible happened. The timestamp showed a date during the Korth incursion. I knew the history. Every cadet did. The Korth consumed entire systems. Their ships outnumbered coalition fleets 10-1. No colony survived contact. The footage started. Emergency alarms echoed through the settlement. Civilians ran everywhere. Buildings burned. Dropships fell from the sky. A disaster. Then the camera focused on a single human. A child. I immediately understood, or so I thought. Humans protected offspring above all else. The child would be evacuated, removed from danger. That was the pattern. The child ran toward the invasion. Toward it, not away. The lecture hall erupted with confusion. The child disappeared behind a damaged structure. Moments later, explosions erupted across the Korth landing zone. 1, 3, 7, 12. Enemy vehicles vanished in fire. I assumed hidden military forces had arrived. The instructor paused the footage. No military forces were present. The child had activated abandoned mining charges. A child, not a soldier, not trained, not armed. A child. The Korth advance stalled for 17 minutes. 17 minutes. Long enough for evacuation ships to escape orbit. I searched for logic. There had to be logic. Humans valued offspring. Humans protected offspring. That was the pattern. Why would a child risk death? No answer existed. At least none I could understand. The instructor moved to the third recording. By now, unease had spread through the chamber. Nobody spoke. Nobody joked. Nobody looked comfortable. The image showed deep space. A damaged coalition cruiser drifted through darkness. I recognized the vessel. The Valiant Dawn. Its destruction had been taught in military history courses. The cruiser was surrounded. Enemy ships on every side. No escape. No reinforcements. No hope. The footage came from an external drone. The instructor highlighted a section of the hull. A maintenance hatch. Tiny. Almost invisible. A human emerged. Just one. I nearly laughed. One human could not change anything. That was absurd. The human carried a tool bag. Not a weapon. Not explosives. Tools. Several cadets relaxed. Finally, something normal. The human was a repair specialist. A technician. Predictable. The technician floated across open space. Toward the enemy fleet. My confusion returned. There was no propulsion system. No combat suit. No visible plan. The human simply drifted into darkness. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then enemy ships began exploding. One after another. Without warning. Without visible attack. The fleet descended into chaos. Collisions followed. Weapons fired in every direction. Entire formations collapsed. The instructor stopped the recording. The explanation was simple. The human had manually entered an enemy communications relay through an external maintenance port while exposed to vacuum. The resulting network failure caused fleet-wide targeting errors. I stared at the screen. No, that made no sense. The mission should have killed him. The instructor displayed the final report. The technician survived. Of course he survived. Humans always survived. That was becoming the new pattern. The realization disturbed me. Every species possessed limits. Every species understood risk. Every species recognized impossible odds. Humans acknowledged those things, then ignored them. The lecture chamber darkened. A final recording appeared. The instructor's voice changed. For the first time, I detected tension. Real tension. Pay attention to the background. The footage showed a battlefield unlike any I had ever seen. An entire continent burned. Cities glowed beneath clouds of fire. Warships fell from orbit like meteors. Millions were dying. The camera focused on enemy command forces. I watched carefully. Nothing unusual appeared. Then I saw him. A human. Far in the background. Almost hidden. Just standing there. Watching. Doing nothing. The instructor froze the frame. Every cadet leaned forward. My instinct screamed. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The human was smiling. And according to every report recovered from that war, the battle had already been lost. Yet the human was smiling anyway. That was the moment fear first entered my mind. Because every previous recording had taught us the same lesson. When humans looked doomed, they became dangerous. When humans looked desperate, they became terrifying. But this human did not look desperate. He looked certain, and somehow that was far worse. The human was smiling. The image remained frozen above us. No one spoke. No one breathed. Even our instructor seemed reluctant to continue. That frightened me more than the footage. Military veterans did not fear recordings. The instructor finally resumed playback. The smiling human remained in the background, still doing nothing, still watching. I assumed he was broken. Humans suffered psychological collapse under extreme stress. That was my conclusion. A reasonable conclusion. A completely incorrect conclusion. Seconds later, the ground beneath the enemy command fortress began to move. Not shake. Move. At first I thought it was an earthquake. Then entire mountain ranges started rising. The lecture chamber erupted. Cadets shouted. Some stood. Others stared in horror. The mountains were not mountains. They were ships. Thousands of them. Ancient Terran warships buried beneath the planet's crust centuries earlier. The enemy had built their headquarters directly above them. The smiling human had known. The enemy had not. The buried fleet launched simultaneously. The continent cracked apart. Enemy armies vanished beneath collapsing oceans of stone and fire. The battle ended in 22 minutes. 22 minutes. A war that had lasted 11 years. I expected the footage to stop. It didn't. The camera zoomed toward the human. His expression never changed. Not excitement. Not relief. Not triumph. He simply looked tired, as if he had spent years waiting for a door to open. The recording ended. The lecture hall was silent. I finally understood the pattern. Humans charged into danger. Humans ignored impossible odds. Humans survived things that should kill them. The mystery was solved. Or so I believed. The instructor looked at us. Then he said the words that changed everything. No, that is not the pattern. Unease returned instantly. If that were the pattern, humans would have gone extinct long ago. Nobody moved. The instructor activated another file. This one was different. No battle. No explosions. No warships. Just darkness. A small exploration vessel drifted through deep space. I recognized the incident. Every species knew the story. The Black Silence event. A disaster. A mystery. A graveyard. 23 ships entered the anomaly. Only one returned. The surviving vessel belonged to humans. The footage came from inside the ship. I studied the crew. Exhausted. Hungry. Terrified. Finally, something familiar. Fear made sense. Fear was rational. The ship's commander addressed the crew. We have enough supplies for 6 people. There were 12 humans aboard. My instincts relaxed. I knew what would happen. Half would be sacrificed. Logical. Necessary. Efficient. The humans immediately began dividing supplies equally among all 12. I frowned. That was stupid. Objectively stupid. The instructor allowed the footage to continue. Days passed. Then weeks. Food dwindled. Systems failed. The anomaly swallowed every signal they transmitted. Rescue became impossible. One crew member collapsed. Then another. Then another. Death approached. I waited for the humans to abandon the weakest. Every species would. Any species that didn't would eventually disappear. That was survival. That was nature. That was reality. The humans carried the weakest, fed the weakest, protected the weakest. The weaker they became, the harder they worked for each other. It was madness. Absolute madness. 3 months later, the vessel escaped the anomaly. 7 humans survived. I felt vindicated. 5 had died. The strategy had failed. The humans had paid the price for their irrationality. The instructor enlarged the casualty list. I looked closer, then looked again, then a third time. The 7 survivors had all been among the weakest crew members. The dead humans were the strongest, the healthiest, the most capable. The strongest had sacrificed themselves first. My mind rejected the information. That was backward, completely backward. The strongest existed to survive. Every ecosystem in the galaxy proved that. The instructor read the captain's final log. Only one sentence. We protect tomorrow, not ourselves. A strange feeling settled over me. I did not like it. The next recording appeared. Another battlefield. Another disaster. Another human. By now I expected that. Humans were always present when impossible things happened. This time the footage came from enemy sensors. A species called the Varn. Predators. Efficient killers. They had conquered 73 worlds. Their doctrine was simple. Break resistance. Break hope. Break survivors. The recording showed a human settlement under siege. The Varn surrounded it. No escape. No reinforcements. No chance. The Varn commander transmitted a demand. Surrender. The humans refused. The Varn destroyed the settlement's defenses. The humans refused. The Varn destroyed half the city. The humans refused. I understood this behavior. Pride. Humans were proud creatures. Dangerously proud. The Varn launched their final assault. The city fell. The defenders died. The battle was over. Or so everyone believed. Then the footage became strange. The humans stopped fighting. No weapons. No resistance. No attacks. Nothing. The Varn entered the city. House by house. Street by street. Block by block. Days passed. Then weeks. Then months. The occupation collapsed. Not because of combat. Because of humans. The humans shared food with captured soldiers. They repaired damaged Varn equipment. They treated wounded invaders. They helped the very beings who had destroyed their homes. I was disgusted. The behavior made no sense. The Varn soldiers began refusing orders. Then entire units defected. Then entire fleets. Within 2 years, the Varn Empire fragmented into civil war. A conquest defeated by kindness. The idea sounded ridiculous. Yet the evidence floated above us. Undeniable. The instructor turned off the projection. Darkness filled the chamber. I felt uncomfortable. Not afraid. Not yet. Just uncomfortable. Humans did not fit. They violated patterns. Every lesson created new contradictions. Every answer produced more questions. The instructor waited, then activated the final recording. The room temperature seemed to drop. My pulse accelerated. I sensed danger before the footage even started. The image appeared. Earth. The human homeworld. The date stamp was classified. Most of the file remained redacted. That alone terrified me. Entire wars were less restricted than this recording. The camera showed dozens of coalition representatives, generals, diplomats, scientists, leaders, all gathered in one room. Across from them sat a single human, an old human, gray hair, wrinkled face, fragile body. I relaxed. At last, a human who looked weak. The meeting appeared calm, civilized, safe. Then the recording's transcript appeared, and every fear I had experienced during the lecture suddenly felt insignificant. Because the coalition representatives were not discussing war. They were discussing humanity's extinction. And the old human was smiling exactly like the human from the battlefield. The same smile, the same certainty, the same impossible calm. Then the old human spoke. 3 words. Nothing more. We planned this. The recording ended. The lecture hall descended into absolute silence. And for the first time in my life, I saw 600 future officers genuinely afraid of a species they considered allies. Because humans did not survive impossible situations. That was never the pattern. The real pattern was far worse. Humans expected impossible situations. And somehow, they were already preparing for them long before anyone else knew they existed. Suddenly, the opening footage made sense. The soldier, the child, the technician, the smiling man. None of them were reacting to disaster. They were executing plans. Plans made by creatures who seemed biologically incapable of surrendering to reality. As we left the lecture hall, one question haunted me. If humans had already planned for their own extinction, what exactly were they preparing to survive next? Years later, after seeing what happened beyond the edge of known space, I finally learned the answer. And I sometimes wish I hadn't, because humans have survived death before. The terrifying part is that they never intended to stop. And that was the day I finally understood humanity. Humans do not survive because they are stronger. They do not survive because they are smarter. They survive because they refuse to accept that the story is over. Every species in the galaxy prepares for life. Humans prepare for the impossible. And when the impossible arrives, they are already waiting. Sometimes I still remember the first thing I ever learned about them. Humans have survived death before. Now I know the truth. Death was never the thing they feared. The thing that should terrify the rest of us is what humans plan to survive next. If you enjoyed this HFY story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments. What do you think humans would survive next? Until the next adventure, stay curious and keep looking toward the stars.